I wasn't planning to stay at the old cabin that night. In fact, I never planned to stay there at all. But sometimes, life has a way of pushing you in directions you never intended to go. It started as an ordinary weekend trip, an attempt to escape the chaos of my everyday life to disconnect for a while. A quiet cabin tucked away in the woods near the town of Millbrook seemed like the perfect solution. I had found it online through a local rental website. The photos were deceiving in their tranquility. The worn wooden walls, the overgrown lawn, the mist that swirled around it like a shroud in the distance. It all looked peaceful in the pictures. The cabin was cheap, far cheaper than I expected, and it had that rustic charm I was looking for. But the price should have been my first warning. The owner, a strange man named Edgar, had given me a quick rundown over the phone. No need for concern. The cabin is old, but it's sound. Just don't go wandering past the tree line, and whatever you do, don't stay out after dark. His voice had a rasp to it, like he'd been chewing on something bitter. It didn't make sense at the time, but I ignored it. I figured he was just one of those eccentric locals who had too many old wives' tales to share. I drove out to Millbrook on a Friday evening, eager to get to the cabin before nightfall. The road leading up to the place was winding and narrow, flanked by towering trees that seemed to close in as the fog rolled in. The air grew thick with mist as I neared the cabin, clinging to the windshield like an unseen hand. When I finally arrived, the place looked exactly as it had in the photos, isolated, forlorn, as though it had been forgotten by time. I unlocked the door with a creak, stepping into the musty interior. The smell of stale wood and dampness hit me immediately. The furniture was old, the floorboards uneven, and everything felt like it had been untouched for years. I tossed my bags onto the couch, took a deep breath, and opened the windows, letting the cool air in. The mist outside seemed to grow thicker with each passing minute, and soon it enveloped the cabin entirely. There was something oppressive about it, like the fog was hiding something. After a quick dinner, I decided to explore the property. The cabin was set on a large plot of land, with a small trail that led into the woods. Edgar's warning echoed in my mind, but my curiosity got the better of me. I thought I'd just go for a short walk, something to stretch my legs before settling in for the night. The mist was thicker now, making the trees appear like shadows, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. I walked for what seemed like hours, the only sound being the crunch of leaves beneath my boots and the occasional rustle in the trees. The farther I went, the colder the air became, and I began to feel that uneasy feeling creeping up my spine. Something wasn't right. That's when I heard it, a faint sound, almost like a child's laugh, but it was muffled, distorted by the mist. I stopped dead in my tracks. The laughter didn't sound happy. It was hollow, empty, a sound that didn't belong in the woods. I called out, "Hello." My voice broke the silence, and the laughter stopped. The fog seemed to thicken, wrapping around me like a suffocating blanket. For a moment, I stood there, heart racing, wondering if I had imagined it. But then, faintly, I heard the cry again. This time, it was more distinct, a child's cry, soft and pitiful. It came from deeper within the woods. Against my better judgment, I found myself moving toward the sound. Each step felt heavier, like the earth itself was trying to pull me back. The mist was so thick now that I could barely see more than a few feet in front of me. My breath came in shallow bursts, and I could feel the weight of something unseen pressing down on me. Finally, I reached a clearing. The trees parted, revealing an old well in the center of the clearing. It was covered in vines, moss, and the remnants of time, but it looked untouched. The mist had settled here, pooling around the well like a thick blanket of smoke. And then I saw it. A child's shoe, small and worn, lay at the edge of the well. It was soaked with what looked like water or something darker. My heart skipped a beat as I knelt down to examine it. The cry, the one I had been following, seemed to echo around me, but there was no child in sight. Just then, a gust of wind blew through the clearing, and the mist parted for a brief moment. I caught a glimpse of something moving in the distance. A shadow, a figure, too far to make out clearly, but it was unmistakably humanoid. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I scrambled to my feet. I didn't know what I had seen, but the fear in my chest told me it wasn't something I should be anywhere near. I ran back toward the cabin, the mist pressing in on me, thick and suffocating. The woods seemed to stretch on forever, but I finally broke through to the familiar sight of the cabin. My hand was shaking as I fumbled with the door, slamming it shut behind me. I leaned against the door, breathing heavily, trying to steady my nerves. I couldn't explain what had just happened. There was no way that was just a random noise or my imagination. Something was wrong with this place. As the night wore on, the child's cry echoed in my mind, louder and louder, until I couldn't tell if it was real or just in my head. I didn't dare leave the cabin after that. The first night in the cabin was restless. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the cry, a distant, aching wail carried by the wind. I kept telling myself it was just in my head, but deep down I knew better. Something was out there. Morning came too slowly, and when it finally did, I felt like I had barely slept at all. Pale light filtered through the mist outside, casting everything in a cold, gray hue. The air inside the cabin was damp, and an uneasy silence settled over the place. I told myself I had imagined the voice, the laughter, the figure in the mist. Maybe it was exhaustion or the eerie atmosphere playing tricks on me. I made myself coffee, trying to shake the lingering unease. But the moment I stepped outside onto the porch, I froze. Something had changed. The trees that bordered the cabin seemed farther away, their outlines blurred by the dense fog. The air was thick, carrying a faint, sour smell like damp earth and something else, something rotten. I swallowed hard, pushing down the anxiety clawing at my throat. That's when I noticed them. Footprints. Small, bare footprints in the damp soil, leading from the woods directly to my cabin. They were faint, almost as if they had been made hours ago, but they were there, trailing toward my front door. A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't seen them last night. I hadn't heard anything approach, and yet they were here. I forced myself to step forward, crouching to inspect them closer. The prints were small, child-sized. My stomach twisted as I followed the trail with my eyes. They stopped abruptly, just a few feet from my doorstep. No return footprints, no signs of where the child had gone. Just nothing, as if they had vanished into the mist. I swallowed my unease and turned toward the forest. The fog was still thick, swirling like a living thing between the trees. A part of me wanted to leave, to get into my car and never look back. But another part, some deep, irrational curiosity, made me hesitate. I had heard the cry last night. I had seen something moving in the mist. And now, these footprints. Had a child really been out there? The thought unsettled me even more than the alternative. If a child was lost in these woods, they wouldn't survive for long. I hesitated, but the guilt gnawed at me. If I left now without checking and something happened to them, I wouldn't be able to live with that. I grabbed my flashlight, even though the daylight had fully risen, and stepped into the trees. The deeper woods, the further I walked, the quieter everything became. No birds, no rustling leaves. Just the dull thump of my boots against the damp earth. The mist clung to my skin, cold and heavy. I followed the trail of footprints, or at least where they should have continued. But there were none. It was like the child had simply appeared in front of my cabin and then ceased to exist. I pressed on, deeper into the woods, my breath visible in the morning chill. The trees loomed taller, their twisted branches forming unnatural shapes in the fog. The deeper I went, the stronger that rotten smell became. Then I saw it, the well, the same one from last night's clearing. My heart pounded against my ribs. I knew I had walked straight from my cabin in the opposite direction. There was no way I had circled back. And yet, here it was, standing in front of me as if I had never left. Something about it was different this time. The vines covering the stone were darker, wet, as though freshly disturbed. The air around it was freezing. And then I noticed something that hadn't been there before. More footprints. They circled the well, small, barefoot prints, walking around and around, never straying, never stopping. Just an endless loop. A sickening dread coiled in my stomach. The child's cry from last night echoed in my mind. The weight had led me here. I shouldn't be here. I turned to leave. And then a whisper, not a voice, not a sound carried by the wind. A whisper right next to my ear. Help me. I spun around, the flashlight shaking in my grip. No one. The fog thickened, curling around me like a living thing. The whisper came again, softer this time, barely audible over the sound of my own pounding heartbeat. Help me, please. I backed away from the well, my hands trembling. Then something moved, a shape small, hunched, just at the edge of the mist beyond the well. I froze. A child, a little girl, standing just out of reach, her pale skin nearly blending with the fog. Her dress was old-fashioned, stained with dirt. Her hair hung in tangled, damp strands over her face. I couldn't see her eyes. She didn't move. She just stood there, head tilted slightly, as if watching me. I tried to speak, but my throat had gone dry. Are you lost? I finally managed, my voice barely above a whisper. The girl didn't answer. Then in one slow, unnatural motion, she lifted her hand, small, pale fingers pointing past me, toward the well. I followed her gesture, my body moving on instinct. I took one step closer, then another. I peered over the edge. The darkness inside was absolute, the kind of black that swallowed everything. No bottom, no water, just an endless void. And then a sound, wet, dripping. Something shifted in the darkness below. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. When I turned back to the girl, she was gone. The mist around me seemed to pulse, pressing in, suffocating. The air felt wrong, charged with something unseen. I ran faster than I ever had, the trees blurring past me, my feet stumbling over roots and rocks. The whispering never stopped, growing louder, overlapping. Help me, help me, help me. The voices, dozens of them, whispering in the mist. The cabin appeared suddenly, its worn walls barely visible through the fog. I burst through the door, slamming it behind me, my chest heaving. The silence inside was deafening. I stood there, hands shaking, tried to calm my frantic breathing. And then I heard it. A single, soft tap on the window. I turned slowly. The window was covered in condensation, my own breath fogging up the glass. And in the center of the misted window pane, a small handprint. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The small handprint on the fogged-up window sent a spike of dread down my spine. My mind scrambled for a rational explanation. Maybe it was my own handprint smudge from earlier. Maybe condensation had formed an odd shape, but I already knew the truth. I had never touched the window, and even if I had, my hand wasn't that small. A wave of nausea rolled through me as I took an unsteady step back. The wooden floor creaked beneath me, the sound loud in the suffocating silence of the cabin. I turned away from the window, tried to shake off the feeling that someone was watching me. I locked the door. It was a pointless gesture, but it made me feel slightly less exposed. I checked my phone, hoping for some distraction, but there was no signal. The fog outside had swallowed everything. I had to get out of here. I grabbed my keys from the table and moved toward the door. But just as my fingers brushed the doorknob, something stopped me. A sound. Soft. Deliberate. A slow, scraping noise from somewhere inside the cabin. My body tensed, every nerve on edge. The sound was faint, but unmistakable, a sharp, rhythmic scratching. It was coming from the far end of the room, near the old wooden walls. I turned slowly, my heart hammering in my chest. The sound didn't stop. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Something was carving into the wood. My pulse pounded in my ears as I took a hesitant step forward. The dim light in the cabin flickered, casting shifting shadows along the walls. The air was thick, stale, pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. I reached the far wall and ran my fingers along the wood. The scratches were fresh, thin, jagged lines running in uneven patterns. My stomach twisted as I realized they weren't random. They were letters. I leaned in, my breath catching as I read the words scratched into the wood. Don't listen to her. A chill shot through me. I stumbled back, my mind racing. Who had written this? Edgar, the man who rented me the cabin? Had someone else stayed here before me? Or worse, was someone else here now? I spun around, scanning the room. The cabin was small, just one open living area, a kitchen, and a single bedroom. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. But I wasn't alone. I could feel it. The air had changed, become heavier, colder. The whispering started again, soft at first, then growing in intensity. Help me, the same voice from the woods. I squeezed my eyes shut. It's not real. It's in your head. Please. A soft thud. My eyes snapped open. The bedroom door had moved. Just slightly. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. The crack between the door and the frame was wider now, revealing just a sliver of the darkness beyond. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore the prickling sensation at the back of my neck. My body screamed at me to leave, to get in my car and drive as far away as possible. But some terrible, morbid curiosity kept me rooted to the spot. I stepped toward the door. The wood was old, splintered at the edges. The handle was cold beneath my fingers. I pushed it open. The room was empty, at least at first glance. The bed was untouched, the dust-covered dresser standing against the far wall. The closet door was slightly ajar, but I wasn't about to open it. Then I saw it. More scratches, not just on the walls, on the floor. the bed frame, the edges of the mirror hanging on the wall. A name, over and over again. Eloise. A sick feeling churned in my stomach. I didn't know the name, but somehow I felt like I was supposed to. A movement in the mirror caught my eye. I froze. My reflection was wrong. I was standing still, but in the mirror, my reflection was slightly off, just a fraction of a second behind. And then it moved when I didn't. Just a twitch, a slight tilt of the head. A shiver of terror crawled up my spine. Then, in the mirror behind me, a shape. Small, pale. The girl, standing in the doorway. I spun around. Nothing. The doorway was empty, but the air was colder now. And then a whisper right next to my ear. She's lying. I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. My breaths came in ragged gasps as I pressed my back against the wall. The whisper had been so close. I had felt the breath against my skin. This wasn't in my head. Something was in this cabin, and it wasn't just the girl. Something else was here, watching, waiting. The scratches, the whisper, the reflection in the mirror, and the handprint on the window. I forced myself to look. It was still there. But this time there were two. I wanted to leave. I should have left, but I didn't. Something kept me there, something deeper than fear, something I couldn't explain. It was as if the cabin itself had dug into me, anchored me in place. The rational part of my brain screamed at me to grab my keys, run out the door, and never look back. But my body wouldn't move, because I knew deep down, if I left, it wouldn't matter. She would follow. The second handprint on the window was smaller than the first, as if the child wasn't alone anymore. The idea made my stomach turn. I swallowed hard and forced myself to step away from the door. The wooden floor groaned under my weight, the sound echoing in the stillness. The cabin felt different now, thicker, heavier, like the walls had closed in an inch while I wasn't looking. The silence stretched, pressing against my eardrums like a hell breath. Then a soft creak. Not from me, from under me. I went completely still. The noise had come from beneath the floorboards. I stared down at my feet. The floor looked normal, aged wood, slightly warped, but nothing out of place. Creak. It happened again. This time I felt it. A shift beneath my foot. A movement, subtle but wrong, as if something beneath the floor had shifted in response to my weight. I backed away, my pulse hammering. A memory surfaced, faint but insistent. The well, the footprints circling it, the whispering. She's lying. I swallowed hard. I had to know. There was a rusted fireplace, poker leaning against the stone hearth. I grabbed it with shaking fingers and knelt, pressing the tip against one of the loose floorboards. I hesitated. Then, before I could change my mind, I pried it up. The nail screamed as it came loose, the wood splintering. A gust of damp, rotting air rushed up from the dark gap beneath. The smell was overwhelming, earthy and wet, laced with something sickly sweet. I gagged, covered my nose. The hole was barely big enough to see through. But what I did see made my blood run cold. Fingers. Small, pale fingers pressed up against the underside of the floorboards, reaching. And then they moved. I fell back, scrambling away, my breath coming in sharp gasps. The board I had pried loose rocked slightly, like something underneath had pushed it back into place. I was shaking. My entire body screamed at me to get out, to run and never come back. But before I could move, a knock. Soft, rhythmic, coming from underneath me. I choked on a breath, my chest tight with terror. Then tap. Tap, tap. 3 soft knocks, like a child seeking permission to come inside. I lunged for the door. The knob wouldn't turn. The locks were undone. The door was supposed to open, but it wouldn't. My fingers fumbled, yanking, pulling. The wood was ice cold beneath my touch. Then from behind me, "Please, let me out." The voice was soft, a child's voice. So close, right behind me. I squeezed my eyes shut, my hand still clawing at the door. "Don't listen to her." The whisper from earlier, sharp, urgent. Then, the child's voice again. "Please, it's dark down here." My breath hitched. My back was still turned, my entire body rigid. If I turned around, I knew I would see her. The air behind me shifted. A presence. A weight. Slowly, so painfully slow, I felt small fingers curl around the hem of my shirt. A whimper escaped my throat. "You're the only one who can help me." My shaking fingers finally found the deadbolt. I wrenched it open, shoving the door outward, and the moment I did, the grip on my shirt was gone. I ran. The mist outside was suffocating, but I didn't stop. My feet pounded against the dirt as I sprinted toward my car. My keys were clenched so tightly in my fist they dug into my palm. I didn't dare look back. I slammed into the driver's side door, yanking it open and throwing myself inside. My fingers fumbled to start the engine. Finally, the car roared to life. I threw it into reverse, tires spinning in the mud. The mist was too thick, swallowing the road, but I didn't care. I had to get away. My breath was ragged, my hands slick with sweat as I gripped the wheel. The trees blurred past as I sped down the path, the fog distorting everything. And then a shape, in the middle of the road. Small, still, the girl, standing directly in my path. I screamed, yanking the wheel to the side. The car veered off the road, crashing through the trees. Branches scraped against the windows as the vehicle skidded to a stop. For a moment, everything was silent. I was gasping, my hands still locked on the wheel. Slowly, I turned my head. The girl was gone, but something was in the trees. Dark, shifting figures. Watching. I didn't wait to see what they were. I hit the gas and didn't stop. Didn't stop until I saw the first signs of town. Didn't stop until the mist was far behind me. And even then, I knew it wasn't over. Because in the rearview mirror, just for a second, I swore I saw her reflection staring back at me. I didn't go home. I couldn't. Even as I sped into town, I could feel it, her. The girl. The thing that looked like a girl. She was still with me. No matter how far I drove, how many streetlights I passed, how many people I saw, the feeling never left. I parked in front of a gas station, my hands trembling against the wheel. My throat was dry. My body ached from gripping the steering wheel so tightly. The mist had thinned, but I still felt suffocated, like something was still wrapped around me. I needed to tell someone. But tell them what? That I'd seen something impossible? That I'd heard whispers from the woods and found fingers beneath the floorboards? No one would believe me. Hell, I barely believed myself. I sat there for what felt like forever, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. The dim lights from the gas station cast flickering shadows across my face. My skin looked pale, hollow, then a shift, a flicker. The reflection of the back seat lagged behind. I froze. For just a second, a fraction of a second, the reflection of the car's interior had delayed. Like something inside was moving when it shouldn't be. Like someone was there. My breath hitched. Slowly, my eyes moved lower to the rear window. Fogged up. and in the center, another small, wet handprint, right behind my head. A lunge for the door handle, throwing it open. My feet hit the pavement hard as I stumbled out of the car, gasping for breath. My head spun. People were around, normal people. The hum of cars, the flicker of neon signs, the smell of gasoline. I wanted to believe I was safe, but I wasn't. I knew that now. She had followed me. I booked a cheap motel room for the night. I couldn't go home. Not yet. Not when I could still hear the whispering. The motel was run down, the flickering sign buzzing against the night. I didn't care. I just needed to be inside, away from my car, away from the open road. The moment I stepped into the room, I locked the door, bolted it, shoved the dresser in front of it for good measure. And yet I still felt watched. The whispering started again as soon as the lights went off. Soft, delicate. She's lying. I squeezed my eyes shut. The bed was stiff beneath me, the sheets scratchy. My pulse pounded against my skull. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Somewhere between exhaustion and madness, I forced myself up, flicking on the bathroom light. The mirror above the sink was cracked, a jagged fracture splitting my reflection in half. I stared at myself, dark circles under my eyes, clothes wrinkled. My hand shook. I turned the faucet on, splashing cold water on my face. Then, as I looked up, my reflection smiled. I wasn't smiling. I stumbled backward, my breath hitching. The reflection, my reflection, tilted its head just slightly. Then it mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I understood. Let me in. I ran. The motel room didn't feel safe anymore. Nothing did. I knew I couldn't escape. She was always there, in the reflection of glass doors, in the sheen of my phone screen, in the window of my car as I drove into the night. Her small, pale face, her lips moving in soundless whispers. The closer I got to home, the worse it became. My mirrors no longer showed, just me. Every time I turned them away, she moved closer. And the scratches, I woke up to them one morning. Not on the walls, not on the floor, on my skin. Thin, shallow lines ran across my forearm. Letters. A name. Eloise. I scrubbed at them, but they wouldn't fade. The whispering grew louder. Help me. Please. Let me in. Until, finally, I did. I don't remember the exact moment I gave in. Maybe it was after I covered every mirror in my house, only to wake up and find them uncovered. Maybe it was when I stopped sleeping altogether, afraid of what I'd see when I woke up. Or maybe it was when I started hearing her voice inside my own head. I don't know anymore. But one night, as I stood in front of the mirror, she stopped whispering. And instead, she smiled. And I smiled back. Because now we were the same. I wasn't afraid anymore. I understood now. And if you're reading this, if you ever hear a child's cry in the mist, if you ever see small handprints on glass, don't listen. Don't look. Don't smile back. Because once you do, you're already hers.